Alright, hello everyone and welcome back to Kottabos Space Program, where today we are having a look at yet another wonderful mod, this time in the form of the Maritime Pack, being made by forum user Fengist, and what this glorious little mod adds into the game is a selection of parts which allow you to make your own modular ocean-going vessels, or of course, boats, however you want to say it, and that is just wonderful. I've always had this real strange fascination with boats in this game, and I've always been quite saddened by the relative lack of parts to be able to do so. I mean, we've got loads of parts for planes and rockets, which of course makes sense. It is Kottabos Space Program after all, but we've only ever had a few parts here and there for boats, so when I saw this one pop up on the forums, I just couldn't pass it up, despite the fact that it is very much still in alpha, has a fair few bugs at the moment. So keep that in mind as we're going through the mod here today. But that is enough yammering. Let's head on into the spaceplane hangar and take a look at what this mod has to offer us. Now, typically, whenever I look at a new parts pack, I like to check for the command pods that it adds. But as you can see here, we can't actually load them first. They cannot be the first part of the vessel, which I guess kind of makes sense. You do want a hull to actually have a proper boat to then put your command pod onto. So what we have to do is start down here in structural, where we have 6 different hull parts for you to choose from for the time being. Now we can start here by this clipper bow, which is a pretty basic little bow here, pointy, etc., as a ship should be. And you'll notice it's not exactly the best of texturing or the best of modeling, but as I mentioned a moment ago, very much in alpha. This is actually the first release of this mod, and texturing, etc., is already on the top list of things to improve. These are basically placeholder textures for the time being. But yes, we do have this lovely little bow. We have a second clipper foxil bow. I have no idea how you pronounce that. And it's essentially identical in shape, except for these 2 little ramps that lead up to the bow. So if you would prefer that for your design choice, that is available there. Very nice indeed. We then have, after the bow, the central part of the hull, which is just the clipper hull. And you attach as many of these as you need to make your ship as big or, of course, as small as you desire. And then after that, you need to put on a stern to finish up your boat, and we have 3 of those, starting with the just clipper helo stern, which is quite a cool one. Nice little blocky sort of angular stern in the back here, with a beautiful little helipad, so if you do like to risk yourself at sea by trying to land on your boat, you could give it a go with this. Quite nice, very cool indeed. We then have 2 different rounded sterns, the first of which just being the regular old clipper rounded stern here, and then a basically identical powered clipper stern. There we are, that has its own engine. Now, if you have either the regular helo stern or the plain old clipper round stern, you'll notice it's got nothing on the back here. You have to add your own engines for these. So you have to provide the power for the ship. This one, on the other hand, has its own engine, which is essentially just a jet engine put under the waterline. It does have its own fuel supply at 150 units of fuel. It uses very, very little in the actual production of thrust, which for the thrust, it's 167.9 on that. A pretty good ISP of 19,200, and sips the fuel at 0.122 per second, and requires air intake of 2.81 per second. So pretty good little engine. Does of course provide its own electrical charge, has some gimbaling so you can actually, steer your boat, generally a good thing. And as for the fuel, at this point it'd be good to point out that it's the only hull part with its own fuel. The rest of these do not have any fuel whatsoever. So for the time being, if you need more than 150 fuel provided by the powered clipper stern, I don't know why that seems to be a tongue twister for me, you have to go over here and just chuck on some additional fuel tanks. Hopefully in the future, I would like to personally see the other hull pieces having their own fuel as well. I think that'd be a good move, but hey, that's just me. Now, the last part that we have in structural, which we'll take a look at while we're here, is the dinghy davit, I also don't quite know how to pronounce that, and this is used in conjunction with the dinghy part that we have in utility, and that is its own independent little, well, it's a dinghy, it's a little raft, you can use it, it's powered, it's cool, and this davit is used for winching it up and down from the water, but has to be used with the Kerbal attachment system. You would put the winches from the Kerbal attachment system onto these rounded parts on the two ends here, and that is how you would raise and lower the boat from the water. And yeah, a cool little part indeed, I like it, but I did not install Kerbal attachment system onto this particular save, because, well, it's just for one singular part. I did not see the point. But now that we do have a boat on hand here, we can head back up to the command pods and take a gander at the two that we have here. Now, both of the command pods essentially act the same. They have their own reaction wheel, SAS, 150 electrical charge, and they both hold 5 crew members. The one big difference is the reaction wheel. The cargo ship has a reaction wheel torque of 20, whereas the yacht has only a mere 10. Personally, though, style-wise, I like the yacht part. It is gorgeous. Look at that. Again, note that these are basically placeholder textures. Hopefully in the future we'll have a much nicer yacht command pod, and it's quite cool. Now, the one thing that bothers me about it, this door is where your Kerbals can enter and exit from the command pod. They can then walk up this ramp, and this little, oh god, what would you call that? The covering up at the top of the yacht is too low for the Kerbals to go under, so they basically hit their head, stand there, and then slowly slide down the ramp. It would be nice if that was tall enough for a Kerbal to fit under, so, you know, then you could put some seats, maybe a lounge chair up there. It'd be lovely. The Kerbals could sip some Mai Tais. Everyone would have a good time. But no, for the time being, that is too short, and it kind of bothers me. Now, as for the other command pod, it is, of course, a cargo ship superstructure, much more industrial design to it, and I kind of like the look of it. I don't know why. It reminds me of some sort of weird alien thing. It's beautiful. Very cool. And the hatch for the Kerbals is in the back here. Again, similarly to the yacht one, it holds 5 Kerbals. Now, the next thing that we have in line is 2 different parts in fuel tanks. The first of which is the buoyancy blisters. And this, honestly, I don't know why it's in the fuel tank section. It is not a tank in the slightest. It is, well, a buoyancy blister. It is there to provide your ship more buoyancy. So the heavier your ship is, or the larger your ship is, the more of these you will need along the side of it to keep it floating. Very cool little part, and of course a necessity for making ships actually work in this game. Now, the next part that we have, which technically is a fuel tank because it holds things, is the compressed water tank. And these are used in terms of ballast for your boats. They hold compressed water in them, and each unit of compressed water is worth 1 ton of mass to the ship. So each one of these can hold 5 tons worth of water to help you provide the correct ballast for your boats. We'll go into explaining more about that once we actually get out there. Now, we have nothing in engines, sadly, because the only powered thing is, of course, the stern and, oh yes, the dinghy as well. Command, nothing. Structural, we already went through. Aerodynamics is where we have the ship ventilator air intake for this, because, of course, this engine back here does need its own air intake. So here we are. We have this lovely little old-school air intake here. I love it. Very cool indeed. And it does get in quite a bit of air at 0.6 air intake rating. Very good indeed. Air intake area of 0.006. Overall, a very good one. You could, of course, always throw on any other air intake you like, but this one, of course, has the more nautical feel. Now, eventually, they're going to have, I believe, rudders in here as well, which will be quite cool. I can't wait to see those. But for the time being, the only thing we have in here is the ventilator. Now, next we have 2 parts in the utility tab, the first of which is the marine outboard battery, so that you can throw on some additional electrical charge onto your boats. And currently, this is my favorite of the texturing for all of them, purely because it has the wording. I don't know why, but I always like the extra detailing of having words on your textures, so it's just a nice little marine battery for you to have additional electrical charge. Now then we have the inflatable dinghy, which I've mentioned several times now, which is just a small little independent craft that you could launch from your larger boat. Now it is self-powered as well, but only with a max thrust of 1. So this baby, oh, it is definitely not going to be winning any speed competitions, but it does work quite well, and it sips fuel at using 0.001 fuel per second. It has its own air intake, it has its own fuel as well of only 10 units of fuel, but overall works out quite nicely. You just throw a little command seat on there and you have your own personal little boat. Now that is all we have in utility, so finally in science, which again, it's in 2 parts, I don't see why they're in science, I figured they would be in utility, but we have the water decompressor and the water compressor, and these work in conjunction with our compressed water tanks, and the decompressor we can pop right there, and the compressor we can pop right there. And what the water compressor does is it uses 18 electrical charge per minute to output 60 water per minute into your water tanks, whereas the decompressor will take the water out of the water tanks, and it will do that at 30 per minute. And yes, that is how you work with these ballast systems. And that is all the parts that we have on hand for this, so let's load up a crappy little yacht that I made earlier, and amuses me to no end. There we are, the Kottabos yacht. I've got 4 of the little buoyancy blisters on there, which is actually more than it requires for this ship because it's not that big at all and not very heavy. So let's just go to launch it. And of course, if you have a mod like Kerbin side, you can actually launch yourself to a buoy in the water, but I decided not to load that on because I do, of course, have my glorious hyper edit. So all we need to do, set to current, and I believe if I change this to, ooh, not a plus sign, a 6, no, a 6, that's still a 9. Oh, I'm sitting at a very odd angle to my keyboard, so there we go. Excellent. Yes, now that is a 6 and not a plus sign or a 9, we slowly descend ourselves into the water and splashdown? Almost. Come on, a little bit more. Little bit more. And there we go. We are now in the water, and the lovely little buoyancy blisters are keeping us at quite a good water line. We're sitting at quite a nice little bit of, oh god, what's the displacement? Water displacement, that is the word. And if we simply just power up the engine, we can slowly but surely move our vessel. Very slowly. There we go. Throttle it up a bit more. I screwed up the staging. I'm currently firing the ship or the engine from the dinghy. Okay, let's power that down and oh god, we're just gonna turn it off. Shut down engine, and instead turn this one on. I could have sworn I had that all sorted quite nice. But there we go, the main engine is on and our boat is moving at, there we are, about 3, 4, 5 meters per second. Very slowly but surely, and of course with any boating in this game, making some very strange noises as it technically is constantly crashing into the water. But let's slow ourselves down, and I'll talk about that ballast system that I mentioned earlier with the compressed water tanks. Now, as you can see, well, let's actually turn off the engine so we don't have that hum. As you can see, again, our water line, pretty good right here. So if we turn on the water compressor, what will happen is these compressed water tanks will fill up. Each one will end up having 5 tons worth of water inside them, so to a total of 20 for the 4 that I have. And what will happen then is that will end up sinking our ship a little bit. We will start to lower in the water, as you can see. There we go. We are at about half the compressed water, and we have dropped massively in our water line. It's actually gone down roughly about halfway between where it was and our maximum that we could potentially have before we sink. So the waterline was basically at the buoyancy blisters there, and it's now actually almost about 2/3 the way up to the top rim of our hull. So that is something that, oh boy, you'd want to watch out. Now, why would you want to sink the ship? Well, you really wouldn't, but what you would want to do is even out the weight of the ship. So say we wanted the back of the ship to stay lower in the water. We could turn off these tanks from being used and then turn on the decompressor. Oh, we should actually probably deactivate the compressor. And the water is going to leave from these front tanks, raising up the bow of the ship, whereas the stern of the ship will actually start to lower more and more into the water. Let's actually deactivate that because we are starting to technically sink. Oh boy. Okay, actually, let's turn these back. Actually, no. This could be useful for me for testing out the dinghy. It's technically would be in the water at this point. But there you go. You could adjust the ballast of your ship. So if, say, you have a heavy load on a cargo ship that's kind of leaning it to the right a bit, you could, adjust the ballast on the left of the ship to make it heavier, to sort of lean you back the correct way, or lower the back of the ship, the front of the ship, or, of course, stern and bow if you want to use the nautical terms, etc. And that is the use of these. That'll help you keep just the right water level that you want for your ship. Now, if we get Jebediah out on EVA, I'll show you first off what I was talking about with the ramps here earlier. If we go all the way up, boom, he hits his head. It's just short, too. It's like right at the red lines of his helmet, so it just needs to be a little bit higher for him to get under it. But no, instead, what I want to do is try out the dinghy. I have not had a go with it yet, so let's get Jebediah on board. And then what we're going to do is activate its engine, since we screwed it up earlier. Decouple the separator. There we are, and now we are our own independent vessel. Let's throttle up. And there we go. We've left the mothership. Oh, we have not left the mothership. Oh, there we go. There we are. Okay, the dinghy is not quite buoyant enough. Jebediah's head is the only part poking out of the water. Okay, there we go. We have a dinghy with not a very good buoyancy ratio. Good turning rate, though. Very nice. Hopefully, the buoyancy of this craft will get fixed in the future so it's actually above the water. Oh, boy, we need to actually rotate this thing a bit. But yeah, there we go. That is currently what we have on offer with the Maritime Pack being released once again by forum user Fengist, and it is glorious. I cannot wait to see what else gets added to this pack. Now, some of the features they are wanting to add in are things like additional hull types, adding pontoons, catamarans even, of course the retexturing so that the stuff actually looks decent, the potential for sailboats in the future, which would be quite interesting. I'm intrigued to see how that would actually happen. More flotation devices, and just a whole load of other different things. I really, really am enjoying this mod. As I said earlier, I have a strange fascination with boats in this game, and it's very cool to see a new mod coming out to allow for the creation of a wide variety of boats. Now, you could use the different hull pieces and the different command pods to make any size or shape of boat you desire, and in the future, when they add in more parts, it'll just be cool to see what sort of boat you can make. So if you would like to give this mod a go for yourself, you can download it from the link in the description, as always. And I definitely say to go and give it a try. It is just glorious. But yes, I also hope you have enjoyed this episode today, and of course that you come back for the next. But until then, thank you for watching, my friends. And as always, have a good one.